Welcome into 2-for-1 Drafts. This is Austin Gayle with Mike Renner, the Wednesday edition of 2-for-1 Drafts. Mike, you recently dropped a 3-round mock draft. How fucking insane was that, doing all 3 rounds?
That was my Tuesday. My Tuesday was just 10 radio hits and a 3-round mock draft.
My God.
Just like establishing the picks themselves took longer than probably day 2 is actually going to take. Like, it was just a grind to try to make everyone happy with it. It's my goal. It's my goal to make you guys happy with all these. And
what's really unfortunate is that the bars aren't open, because you could have gone to the bars Tuesday night and led with that you were doing a 3-round mock and radio hits all day. Do you want to hang out later? I feel like it would have really
that's can't miss right there.
Yeah, that's dynamite for sure. All right, we're going to talk about the 3-round mock draft. I highlighted some of my favorite and least favorite picks in all 3 rounds. We're also going to talk to Rotoworld and NBC Sports analyst Josh Norris. Met him at the Combine in person. Great dude. Really, really smart dude as well. I definitely recommend listening to his podcast with John Daigle and Ian Hartitz. It's a very good podcast. Really respect what they do at Rotoworld. Josh Norris will be fun to bring on. But without further ado, let's dive into this mock draft, the thing you were grinding out all Tuesday, whatever it may be. I want to start with my favorite pick. I'm going to go in order here with the favorite picks, starting at the Las Vegas Raiders, grabbing Christian Fulton at number 19. I think grabbing a cornerback at 19 for the Raiders is a very smart decision, because you have to think they're going to take the best receiver available at 12, maybe Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, whoever falls to them at 12. And then at 19, I think there's a ton of value at cornerback, whether it's CJ Henderson of Florida, Christian Fulton of LSU, or even maybe Jalen Johnson of Utah, if you want to sneak him in at 19. But I think Christian Fulton to Las Vegas, great value, high positional value pick, and a very, very good player.
How sad are you going to be when they draft like Kenneth Murray at 19, or you know something's coming? They're going to break your heart again, the Raiders. But no, Fulton makes too much sense. And also schematically, like I said this before, last year, 2018, was when he looked at his best, when he made the most plays on the football, when he made those real high-level plays, and they played a lot more quarters. And the Raiders, Paul Gunther, they off zone. Like that is his calling card. That's what they run. That's what that defense is. That is what Christian Fulton's built. You can sort of, the wingspan concerns, size concerns that people have about him don't really matter in a defense like that. That is not what, plays in a defense like that. Ball skills do. Being able to read routes and break on balls consistently does. That's what Christian Fulton brings to the table. So that one makes too much sense. Now, will it actually happen? Who knows? But I love that.
For those who don't know why Mike says break my heart, I was born in Oakland, California. I had season tickets with my dad for like 8 years before I went to San Diego State for college. So Raiders fan, born and bred. It's been a little bit different since I've become like an analyst and worked in the field, but still supporting those Raiders. Since they drafted Cleveland Farrell, it's been a distant relationship, that's for sure. But Christian Fulton in Las Vegas, I love the fit. I love the value. I don't know if the Raiders go that way. I could see them maybe going A.J. Terrell instead. I could see them going off-ball linebacker instead. But I think this fit, DeAndre Swift would be just absurd. But I also like trade down. I saw, even though these don't matter, but a Bleacher Report update that they're interested in trading down. Like, so is every team. But again, I don't hate to trade down either at 19. All right.
Because you had no second rounder for them, right? And then
exactly. Their next pick after 19 is 80 and then 81. They don't pick for a while after that, so they could trade down. All right, going to this next pick here, out of the first round, Willie Gay Jr., first player off the board on day 2, going to the Cincinnati Bengals. You've said Willie Gay Jr. is perfect for the Bengals a handful of times on the podcast because they don't care about off-field. They don't care he cheated chemistry test. They don't care he punched the backup quarterback in the jaw. They just want good football players, and Willie Gay Jr. is exactly that. Yeah,
I mean, that was some of that might have been Marvin Lewis and his penchant for that. But I mean, the scouting staff still brought these guys in, and talent wise, Willie Gay Jr. still kind of a steal at 33. Like, this guy has first round talent, which really haven't seen it much on the football field. He's had fewer than 300 snaps and coverage in his career, but he has a 92.9 coverage grade for his career. He has been elite when he is on the field in coverage. That is what the Bengals need. You don't have to tell Bengals fans that. That one's pretty obvious. So if you are going to get a linebacker here, I think I went on one of the Bengals podcasts with The Athletic yesterday and said, Kenneth Murray is not going to fix your coverage woes. That's not the guy you want there to fix that. Willie Gay, I think, feasibly could.
Yeah, and I know they added Josh Bynes at off-ball linebacker in the offseason, but again, that's not a guy that's going to come in and solve the problems that Willie Gay Jr. can solve with his athleticism, burst, and all of those things. I really do like that. And you saw Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Media said he would not be surprised or something along those lines that if Willie Gay Jr. goes off early on day 2. I don't know if he's first player off the board, but I think there's a good chance he goes high in the second round. Next pick here, the pick right after, he's one of my guys, Michael Pittman Jr., the USC wide receiver, going to the Indianapolis Colts at 34. They trade away the number 13 overall pick to forward DeForest Buckner of the San Francisco 49ers, not giving them a first-round pick, but they still draft at 34 and grab Michael Pittman Jr., a bigger receiver that the Colts like. And I think Michael Pittman Jr. ahead of T. Higgins, in my opinion. I think Michael Pittman Jr. can be a better player at the next level than T. Higgins in a lot of ways. I think this is a very good pick and a very good fit.
Yeah, he's a bigger body. Like he's filled out his frame already and seems more NFL ready probably in that regard than Higgins. Pittman's good, dude. Like the more you watch him, the more it's like he does the little things really well. And he's above. We had a discussion for the draft board yesterday, and he made it into the top 25.
Yes.
So he's real. Like I think this guy, I mean, people want to call him like the next Michael Thomas and what, like people always want to find the next guy, and there's not going to be a next Michael Thomas. Like that's a rare guy, but I think he is far more talented than the 34th pick. And I feel like he probably will slip to the second round, but he's far more talented than that.
Yeah, I comped him to Kenny Golladay, but I think he might have better success at the short and intermediate level than what Golladay can have with his like kind of short area quickness and like his change of direction. I think Michael Pittman Jr., again, not the next Michael Thomas, but like Thomas can really, really win at the short and intermediate level because he does change direction well. And I think Michael Pittman Jr. is right up there. I've liked him for a long time. After that discussion we had yesterday, I went back and watched all of his targets in 2018. And again, you just see like he can separate down the football field, does the little things well, like you said. The contested catchability is there, sure-handed and open, and traffic situations. I mean, I really do like him. I'm glad we have him in the top 25. And he falls to 34 for the Colts in this mock here. All right, A.J. Epinesa to the Detroit Lions at 35. We're going 33, 34, and 35 for my favorite picks here. I just think if A.J. Epinesa falls out of the first round, one, whichever team picks him up is getting tremendous value. Two, the fit for Epinesa in Detroit is awesome because you've already made the comp for Epinesa to Trey Flowers. He fits in that scheme very well, can be versatile playing inside and outside with Matt Patricia. I think Epinesa, I think now the more I think about it, the floor I used to think maybe was Minnesota at the back end of the first round with one of their first round picks, but maybe the absolute floor is Detroit at 35.
Yeah, I don't see how you can pass on him if you're Detroit here at 35. That's just like a guy built. I mean, the comp is Trey Flowers. That's a guy built for your scheme there in Detroit when he brings to the table and just your desperate need for anyone who can rush the passer. He's shown that, and he's still young. And yes, the athletic testing is a concern, and that's probably what's going to drop him. But if you're playing him more in the interior, playing him more head up over offensive tackles, it's not nearly as big a concern in my mind.
Yeah, I really do like the fit for Epinesa to Detroit. All right, next one here is Kyle Duggar, the Lenore Ryan safety. You said he could maybe add 10 and play off-ball linebacker. Well, regardless of what position you call him, he's going to be playing a ton in the box. And I think with Denver, him going to Denver at 46 is good value. And also, we've talked about this before, but Kyle Duggar going to a creative defensive coordinator that wants to send safeties and linebackers at the quarterback and do creative things with them is where he has to go. And I think him going to either Denver or Baltimore are two fits I really like for Duggar. So he goes to Denver here. I like this fit.
Yeah, they lost Will Parks to the Eagles over the course of free agency. I think Duggar can play a similar role with just more explosiveness. Parks was not near the athlete Duggar is. I mean, not a lot of guys are. That guy's freak. So I think he just, again, versatility to that defense. It will get utilized to its fullest. And so that could be, they have been making something good there defensively so far here in Denver.
Well, while we're on the conversation with Kyle Duggar, I think this is an opportunity to talk about Kyle Duggar versus Jeremy Chinn, because I'm seeing some analysts and some hype around Chinn potentially being a better prospect than Duggar. Both of them tested out like freakish athletes. But where are you right now with Jeremy Chinn and compare the two players?
So Duggar, I just like his physicality far, far more. Like he just plays up to that, athletic testing of those jumps and that speed. Like he is flying around, like he's willing to crank it up to 100 and attack the ball carrier, attack, a route, that sort of thing. Chin, I didn't see that nearly as much, and he didn't play. I think he was better, a little bit better, deeper. Or like he was more of an off ball safety and cover 4. Like he was more like a split safety look there at SIU for most of the time, and I just didn't see the sort of recklessness attacking. Like you could see athleticism. The athleticism showed up at times, but you didn't see it as consistently. You didn't see the play style playing up to those physical traits. And so that's just what worries me when you have a guy who is that physical freak, but like is tentative. That's what I saw more in Chin.
Gotcha. All right, moving forward to more of my favorites here. Laviska Shenault Jr., the Colorado wide receiver, falling. Right now, he's a top 20 player on PFF's board, falling to the New York Jets at number 48. 2 reasons I like this. One, I do think Laviska Shenault falls. I do not think he goes in the first round due to the injury history. He had an injury come up at the combine. He's had multiple surgeries over the past few years. Yes, he's this freakish, explosive dude with rare talent, but injury risk is real. And I think for that reason he falls. But going to the Jets where they need a weapon, a guy that can be a difference maker, but maybe can't afford to spend a first round pick on a wide receiver due to offensive line concerns, adding Laviska Shenault Jr. at 48 could be a dream scenario for Sam Darnold, Adam Gase, and company, because you're getting a difference maker when healthy. The concerns with the Shenault are not what he can do on the football field, but more so if he can stay healthy. And if he stays healthy at pick 48, say he plays, 600 to 800 snaps next year, I mean, you're talking about a very, very good pick with great value at 48.
Yeah, I think so. In this mock, Jets go OT first pick, and then obviously you're banking on the fact that the wide receiver class is so deep, you're going to get a good one on the wrap. And I mean, this is a good one. Like Shenault, you go back and watch the 18 tape when he's fully healthy early in the season before, he got injured midseason even that year. Injuries piled up this past season. And the way he can go from full speed to stopping on a dime, his stop-start ability is just rare for a guy 225 pounds. Like that was kind of the DK Metcalf concern last year was, yes, he could crank it up and it was super explosive, but trying to throttle down, it took him like over 5 yards to run a hitch, to go from full speed to a stop. Laviska does it in less than a yard. Like that guy can just stop and then go and then stop and then go. He just has that special sort of, movement skills that I think he'll figure it out. And everyone and their mother knows he's a raw route runner. Like that's the knock on him. Everyone knows that, but I'll bet on the guy with those traits to figure it out rather than if you're a raw route runner and have like DK Metcalf-esque flexibility, then you might not ever figure it out. But I think he has the flexibility, all the physical tools to improve in that regard.
Yeah, raw route runner, injury risk. That's kind of the 2 big things that come up with Laviska. But also, turn on his 2018 tape and look at how Colorado uses this kid. I have to give a round of applause to Colorado for knowing what they had in Laviska and knowing that to get the best of his ability, they need to do everything and anything with him. They had him at halfback. They had him at tight end, offset tight end, slot receiver, outside receiver. They got him the football any way they could, near the line of scrimmage, away from the line of scrimmage. And I think that's the role he plays in the NFL. Can he stay healthy doing it? Remains to be seen.
He caught 87 passes and broke 29 tackles in 9 games. In 9 games. He only played 9 games that year and just blew it up in all 9 of those games.
I mean, all you need to do is watch the first game. I think they play Colorado State, and they have him lined up like a wingback type of thing. And they just run play action, dump off to the flats to them the entire game. And he just breaks tackles and gains first downs, regardless of where he catches the football, regardless of how they play it. That's the type of player you're getting in Laviska Shenault, a guy that with the ball in his hands is legit, very difficult to stop. But again, the concerns are can you win with him down the football field on an advanced route tree? Can he stay healthy? Again, those are concerns are legit though.
I will say his releases were good though. He's not have to completely change everything, completely teach him how to play everything about wide receivers. Releases are good, and the way he attacks the ball is good. Has been very good in contested catches over the course of his career. It's just I don't think anyone's taught him how to run routes because they didn't utilize him in a route running role.
We've said this before, but I'll say it again. You cannot, if you do draft Laviska Shenault, you cannot just play him at outside receiver. You have to have a plan with Shenault if you want to get the best of his abilities. Another thing too
is that Jets isn't the best.
Maybe not. Maybe the Jets isn't the best fit. You need enough. I mean, you've said the Saints before at the back end of the first round, but maybe he falls around 2 of the Saints. But I just think about the Chiefs. Hello. Oh, okay. Well, like I feel like the Chiefs is another offense where like you can tell they can get creative with receivers and that stuff. So anyway, the last thing I'll bring up with Shenault is that it doesn't get talked about enough, but like this guy's one of the better contested catch receivers in this class from a pure contested catch percentage. Like he caught a lot of contested balls over the past 2 years, and it doesn't get brought up a ton. All right, moving forward.
Shit, that was a lot of Shenault talk.
I'm sorry.
Everything. We broke them down. You guys know all you need to know. Yeah.
Got another receiver here, pick 51. The Dallas Cowboys select KJ Hamler, the Penn State wideout. We were talking to Steve Palazzolo yesterday, and I think he puts it in the best way. I want this kid on my football team because he's a threat to NFL defenses. Like ball skills are bad. I understand that. You probably needs help. I mean, he's a slight of frame, maybe can't play outside receiver against press. You're going to have to kind of scheme him free releases. But like this guy threatens defenses in a similar way that Tyreek Hill and other very fast receivers can do. And I think with KJ Hamler at 51, you're getting a guy that can do damage down the football field and put defenses on their heels.
Yes, I think I'm learning my lesson. Last year, I was too low on Mecole Hardman. I was like super dynamic athlete, but like had similar questions about how he tracked the ball down the football field and with drops, and was he going to be able to? But when you're that dynamic, when you're just on a different level in terms of being able to create separation, I'll live with a few drops. I'll live with a few bobbles. I'll live with not being able to make contested catches. You're just not going to have that many when you're a freak like KJ Hamler. So if he falls to the mid-second because of those concerns and because he's, small dude, 5'9", 185, whatever, he is a massive, massive upgrade over, Cedric Wilson there for the Cowboys right now. Bring something just to the table that the Cowboys don't have, and I think would really take that offense into the stratosphere. I
mean, he could be a lot of maybe what they wanted Tavon Austin to be down the football field, but like I feel like a better threat down the football field, not like a gimmicky player that gets like throwing the football behind the line of scrimmage a ton. I like push him down the football. I think bring up Mecole Hardman's a good take, because I remember talking about Mecole Hardman with you before. It's like this guy can fly, he's got explosiveness, but then you brought up kind of similar concerns, ball skills, maybe can't get off press, that kind of stuff. But again, when you have a guy, when he goes to the Chiefs and they scheme him open and they find ways to get free releases, I mean, he's a freaking threat. Like that's how it works.
And that's why the fit, you already have Michael Gallup. You already have Mari Cooper. They play on the outside. You're fine there. You don't need to ask Hamler to do anything that he can't do exceptionally well. Like you're not asking him to be the guy. You're asking.
I will say this though. Threat. That you had Hamler with Cooper, you got drops concerns out there. Both those guys can have their fair share of drops. Hamler has worse ball skills than Cooper though. Cooper just drops weird. His drops are inconsistent. Drops. Yeah, the concentration drops are weird. All right, next pick here. Let's move a little bit more quickly here.
According to Rex Ryan.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, that was absurd. I'm a Amari Cooper stan, and I still can't. I mean, I just can't believe he did that. Whatever. Noah Igbinoghene, the Auburn cornerback, going to the Tennessee Titans. I like this fit because one, I really do think the ceiling for this guy, like the high end in his game, is very, very good. Like he can match and mirror potentially with CJ Henderson, Jeffrey Okudah, because he has that athletic ability, because he's that rare of an athlete. And I think a good comp for him, in my opinion, would be a Dory Jackson. And I know the Tennessee Titans do like those types where like this guy's athletic enough and fast enough to stick with anyone you've got. Teaching him how to play the position is what's got to come next.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought this one up, because I was on Nashville radio. This was Monday, and they're like, give us some corners who maybe like were fast, ran sub 4.5 that could fit for the Titans in the second round. And I literally forgot every single cornerback that ran a sub 4.5. Like in that moment, I was like, I stumbled over myself. Didn't think of a single name. Afterwards, I'm like, Jesus Christ, Noah Igbinoghene is a perfect like fit for them. Put him in the mock draft, because I think that one makes a lot of sense. Now, does he fall to 61? I have no clue at this point. No. Probably not. But the dude has the movement skills, again, that they would covet, that they have in the past. A very, very capable athlete, just so raw from a ball skills perspective. Does not have that. 6 pass breakups this past season. And the worrisome thing is, like, he didn't really get better from 18 to 19, even though he's still so young. Like, still a lot of the same concerns are there on tape. So that's worrisome. But again, like his talent level, like I said, he might not make it 61 because he has the movement skills at this cornerback position that, I mean, probably only CJ Henderson and Jeffrey Okudah are better than.
Yeah, two things there. Igbenogany, turn on the Alabama tape. Watch every route. Like, don't just watch his targets. Watch every route. What he can do with Devontae Smith and some of the other Alabama receivers he covers in that game is just like not a lot of corners can do. Like, you just can't, like, you don't have that ability. You don't have that special athleticism and speed. Two, I went back and watched Jeffrey Okudah's 2018 tape. He didn't start a ton of games, or he was kind of used sporadically, but oh my gosh, Jeffrey Okudah is so damn good. I feel like you watch the 2019 tape, he doesn't get tested as much as you do see in 2018, but like there's some reps against Jalen Reagor where like he really, it's almost robotic in like how he understands the position and like positioning, like where he should line up pre-snap, where he should be post-snap and two-man cover two, all these different things. Like it was very impressive what Jeffrey Okudah put on tape. I really do love that prospect.
Yeah, I mean, we have Okudah fourth on our board, like above Jerry Jeudy. And we've been talking about how much we love Jerry Jeudy for over a year now, and that's just how special we think Okudah is. Like, and it's not because of positional value. It's just Okudah has everything. He is like the Chase Young of cornerback prospects. He's that good. Like, he really
Go back to 2018 and turn on the TCU game and watch the entire game, because in the beginning, one of the Ohio State cornerbacks is getting kind of torched by Reagor. Then they throw Okudah in, and TCU instantly starts trying to target Jeffrey Okudah underneath on like passes beyond the line of scrimmage, tests his tackling, all this stuff. And the dude instantly holds his own. Still a very young player. I think he was 19 years old in 2018. Like, I mean, it's really impressive. Like, how much he understands the position, how athletic he is, the measurements. Like, Jeffrey Okudah is one of those really good.
Sheffield last year? Sheffield got
Sheffield. Yeah, that's right. I think it was like Arnett and Sheffield might have been the guys who were starting or something along those lines. But again, I turn on the 28.
He was a blackout segment.
There you go. All right, next pick here. Josh Uche, the Michigan edge defender, off-ball linebacker type of hybrid, going to the Miami Dolphins. I love this fit because the defense they play in Miami fits what Josh Uche wants to do with off-ball linebackers and edge defenders, play them all over the place, throw them at the pass, at the quarterback. And I went back and watched more of his tape. Like, his flashy plays are very, very good. Like, even if you throw on 2018 tape, like, he turns some Northwestern offensive tackles into body bags. Same with, like, there's a handful of snaps against Rutgers. He does a nice speed to power on Tristan Wirfs, even though Wirfs is able to reset and hold his own there. But like, Uche has some reps where you're like, oh man, like, this guy's got talent. I talked to him a little bit yesterday, trying to schedule him for an interview for the podcast. He said he didn't run his 40-yard dash at the combine. Pro day got canceled, but he ran a 40-yard dash in the rain. Said he caught the 4.5. He's aiming for the 4.4s. I think if he tested at the combine and tested how I think he can test, I think he'd be getting more first round hype. Maybe I don't see him as a first rounder, but I still think if he did test, you'd start to see maybe top 50, top 40 player hype.
I don't see 4.5 on tape. If he really did, if he really is feasibly in the 4.4 range, yes, you could talk me into drafting him in the first round. I don't see that necessarily on tape, but again, like, he had such a weird role at Michigan. A lot of his best reps are him standing up over the top of a guard and then being the guard. Yeah. Like, he didn't rush off the edge that much. Only 303 pass rushing snaps the last 2 seasons total. Like, he's just, I don't know what they were doing with him. I was scared to really throw him out there, and they do have a heavy rotation, but like, I can't see taking this guy off the field with how good he was. He had the highest win rate of any pass rusher over the last 2 years. So like, he has been very good, but then you worry about those undersized guys. But then he has the lack of experience. And the lack of experience. But he has the length to play the edge. And so that's why I think this Dolphins fit's great, because they will utilize those guys correctly. Those if he will go this year, if he goes to the Lions, if he goes to the Patriots, they will utilize them, and then he will drop into coverage a good deal, but also be used on stunts a ton, get one-on-ones against tight ends, running backs, that sort of thing, because of the scheme. And I think he's just going to dominate if you get him one-on-one against the tight end, against the running back. He has that skill. He uses his hands really well. But man, I really just didn't see 4.5. If he really is a 4.5 guy and has that explosiveness, we could talk. We should talk.
Yeah. I mean, I could also be, even if he is a 4.5 guy, I could still be convinced that maybe he's not a top 40, top 50 player due to low snap percentage, because he just hasn't done it a ton. And I feel like there's going to be a learning curve when he does play more snaps, regardless of what position you line him up at. The other thing is too, like, after he told me 4.5 range or whatever, in the rain, I looked up some like statistical, like some mock draftable comps for him. Like, you look at like C.O. Moore, the former Raiders, like off-ball linebacker, edge defender type, I think makes sense. Joey Porter, a younger version of Joey Porter. And then Clay Matthews came up as a potential option. Like, that kind of player though, were like undersized potentially to play edge, but like has some juice to him to beat offensive tackles on the edge. Like, I kind of liked those types of comps for him.
Yeah. I think he has like I said, of the undersized guys, when you throw him, Carter Coughlin, Zach Bond, and he's one of the few that I'd actually keep on the edge and actually let him try to rush the passer more. Yeah.
I would say that too with Zach Bond. Like, I feel like he was good at edge defender Wisconsin. I don't know. Like, maybe
they've actually been burned too much by these guys. They've been burned by a lot of these undersized guys.
Yeah,
just go to the NFL.
It's easy to get burned. I mean, it's easy. I mean, Miles Burris, San Diego State, baby. It's easy to get burned. All right. Anyway, moving forward, I got a little 2-for-1 here. Terrell Burgess to the Raiders at 80, and then right after that, Travis Gibson, the Tulsa edge defender, at 81 to the Raiders. Back to back, very good picks. I watched a ton of Burgess recently. I love his fit as a potential like slot cornerback, strong safety type of hybrid role. And Travis Gibson should be coming up boards. I think in the right system, playing the right role, playing like a lot more wide 9 than he played at Tulsa. He could be a very productive player, one that can actually rush the passer, unlike the edge defender they drafted at 4 overall a couple years ago.
You've successfully brought up every Raiders pick, which I'm flattered. That means I did a good job here.
There you go.
Terrell Burgess, though, like, you got to move Lamarcus Joyner back to safety. He can't be playing slot again. That was not his best role. He was at his best when he was a true safety role with the Rams. Slot, he just looked out of his depth. Just looked completely like he'd never played slot before, which, well, he hadn't when he was in LA. So move him back. Travis Gibson, though, like you hit on the guy last year, the trade space school guy, small school guy off the edge who produced. That's Travis Gibson in this year's class. Like, if you're going to draft a guy in the mid rounds who has everything you want, that can rush the passer, but maybe just like you have reservations about because he didn't play at a school, didn't play in a role that was favorable. That's Travis Gibson here. So now Max Crosby was younger. He got a lot bigger over the course of the year. Travis Gibson already is, I don't want to say 22, might be turned 23 as a rookie. So he's already older, but the physical tools are also already there, and he already has the size. So you can never have too much pass rush. They don't have a ton of needs at this point, actually, the Raiders. So get yourself go get another guy like Max Crosby.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, with Lamarcus Joyner too, I remember when they signed him, it was like I was tweeting out saying like it's obvious that they need to play him at free safety. Like, it makes too much sense. Like, this is where he had a ton of success in Los Angeles, and then when they came out and said he's playing slots, like, what are you doing? Like he just, I don't understand. Like, all 32 teams have this data. Like, John Gruden has talked to us before about how much he loves PFF and what how he uses it and those things. It's like when the grades are that different from slot cornerback to free safety, I just feel like you'd look into it a little bit more, maybe watch all his plays at slot, watch all his plays at free safety, and clearly see that like he's a better player at that other position. I don't know. It's interesting. Last favorite pick, and then we got to dog you a bit for my least favorite picks. Geno Stone to the Baltimore Ravens at the back end of the last pick of the 3rd round, number 106. Reason I like this is because Geno Stone in a free safety role with the Baltimore Ravens, I think, can do a ton of damage. And the Baltimore Ravens love to draft these smart players that really, really understand how to do things on the back end. I also looked this up. Baltimore sends defensive backs at the quarterback more than any other team in football. And I think Geno Stone can handle a very multifaceted, versatile role in terms of assignment.
Yeah, I think he's would be like, so they play a ton of nickel dime there as well, and just throw a ton of defensive backs over the middle of the field. And that's just him. Like, he is a middle of the field sort of capable of reading, coverages or routes at a really high level, really good instincts, may not be like the greatest in run defense, but they rely on that defensive line and that, Brandon Williams, Calais Campbell, now as strong as it is up front, they rely on those guys to stop the run and let the guys behind them play pass defense. And Geno Stone as an underneath coverage defender, I mean, he's about as good as it gets in this class. Like, that dude is spot on with his reads. So if he falls all the way to 106, I don't know if he will. I don't know where. I have no clue where the NFL sees him at this point, but God, that'd be one of my favorite picks of the draft.
I mean, that's another guy too, where you turn on the tape, don't just watch his targets, don't just watch like his key plays in PFF system, but like watch every play against some of the top offenses, because you get to see like how much he understands the game. Like throws, he's like, there are throws that he limits that quarterbacks just don't make, and therefore like don't always show up in the box score, even in the grading system. Like, this guy really, really understands how to play zone coverage. And I just feel like I really covet smart players at defensive back. Remember Matt LaFleur saying he wants smart players at slot receiver. I think getting really smart players at defensive back can be very, very beneficial, especially if you want to run complex assignments, complex coverages, etc. I know that's something too that Nick Saban values at Alabama in terms of getting defensive backs that can really, really understand coverages and be smart players on the back end. All righty. Let's move to our least favorite picks. I don't have as many. I have a shitload of favorite picks, but I don't have as many.
Yours. I don't have any. These are all great picks.
Yeah, I have my first one, and this one's obvious. We've talked about this before, but I think it would be an absolute disaster, a complete and utter mistake if the Giants, with all the tackles on the board at number 4, take Mekhi Becton of Louisville. I just don't think he's the best tackle available. He's not the best player available. I think this is a reach for size, and that rarely ever pans out.
Okay, yeah, I would take it back. Some of these picks do stink, and I was more projecting what GMs would do. This isn't necessarily what I would do. So, yeah, I mean, Mekhi Becton. The biggest thing here is I think drafting any one of these tackles just without exploring a trade option to someone is a mistake. Like without exploring, and I realistically think like the Panthers could possibly move up to 4 and go target a Jeffrey Okudah if the Lions do trade back or someone like that, or Isaiah Simmons. When you can go all the way down to probably 11 and still get one of the top tackles in this class, don't go reach for the guy at 4. Like when there's this tier where they're so close together, you can afford to move back and pick, the last in that tier. This isn't like the quarterback position where, the difference matters so much in these evaluations. They're all very similar evaluations, these top guys. It's not that big of a difference between them. So,
especially if you're targeting Mekhi Becton. It's like,
yeah, and especially if you're targeting Mekhi Becton.
You trade down, it's like, yeah, we really want Mekhi Becton. Hopefully, you guys target like Worse and Jedrick Wills ahead, and we're able to land him. Or they take him for us, and we can actually get a better player. That would be great too. So I think that trading down, I think, is very smart. And so, but again, are the Giants going to trade down? They've never done with David Gettleman. I don't think they do. I think they end up just taking Mekhi Becton or Derek Brown at 4, which gives a good transition to the next pick here. I think, again, this is another where I sit with the Jags at 9. If they take Derek Brown at 9, when there's receivers on the board, when there's better cornerbacks on the board, I just don't think it's a good decision. Like Derek Brown is not going to offer the value that you can get by drafting one of the receivers available that will likely be available at number 9.
Yeah, I think I said this on the Steve with the pod with Sam and Steve, where they had gone receiver there. They went Judy, and I said the take is drafting Derek Brown is akin to the Leonard Fournette pick, where you didn't really have needs elsewhere. That probably was your biggest need, running back, but it wasn't like, and so you went safe, and it wasn't going to move the needle, and you stay a bad team. The drafting Derek Brown at 9 is he's going to be the cornerstone of your defense, high floor guy, but you're still a bad team. You get a Jerry Jeudy in there. You get a guy who's a dynamic number 1 type of wide receiver. Oh, and then all of a sudden not only does Jerry Jeudy, so when you get a number 1 wide receiver like Jerry Jeudy, not only does he improve your number 1 wide receiver, is he better than like a DJ Chark? Now all of a sudden your number 2 is better because your number 2 is DJ Chark. And now your number 3 is better because now your number 3 is D.D. Westbrook instead of Marquise Lee. So like you're improving multiple positions on your roster by adding that true number 1 type of guy, whereas just adding Derek Brown's not really going to move the needle for you. So with the roster as bad as they are, go to the valuable positions. So yeah, I agree with the Derek Brown thing, but it's just the fit. I worry about it because the fit really is like clean for them.
I think you use similar rationale for this next one I dislike. It's Kenneth Murray to the Baltimore Ravens at 28. I like the fit. I think that's where he has the most success in the NFL. I just think it's too early. Like Kenneth Murray to the Baltimore Ravens at 28, or would you rather have, I feel like Akeem Davis-Gaither or another off-ball linebacker later in the draft? I would say the latter there. I think Kenneth Murray at 28, the value's not there. Maybe the fit is. I think Baltimore would be smarter targeting another wide receiver, targeting, cornerback. I just going higher position value with first-round picks is always where I'm going to lean, and I think there's going to be value at receiver and at cornerback at the back end of the first round.
Yeah, we talked about this on the last pod, but the difference between Patrick Quinn and Kenneth Murray is night and day to me. Kenneth Murray is closer to Jordan Brooks, the Texas Tech linebacker, than he is Patrick Quinn in my eyes. Like there's just too much concern, and I'm not you're not getting. You think about all the guys that really move the needle at linebacker in the NFL. The Luke Kuechly's, I guess, formerly Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner, Deion Jones. These guys, their play style is not like Kenneth Murray. Yeah. The Kenneth Murray play style, there's not a lot of guys really getting by at an elite level that play kind of like that. I don't know. So I'm just hesitant. That's all.
Yeah, I remember when we had the discussion yesterday about kind of finalizing the draft board. I think one of the first things I said, and I know you agreed, was that there has to be a bigger separation between Murray and Patrick Queen, because I just don't think they're going to be able to offer the same value in the roles they play at the next level. Next one here, it's Terrell Lewis, the Alabama edge defender, going to the Seattle Seahawks at 59. Just ahead, a pick ahead of Julian Okwara. I can't get on board with that. I know Seattle covers different things, but like Julian Okwara is an elite athlete, one of these guys that I think could be much more valuable and a much more productive player than Terrell Lewis. I maybe you're more predicting what Seattle does there, but like I think if both those guys are on the board and you're targeting edge defender no matter what, Okwara is the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. I just kind of trying to put my mind in Seattle's mind, trying to get inside John Schneider's mind. And I don't know. They drafted LJ Collier last year, so I don't know what the hell they're going to do. So I just kind of threw shit at a wall there at that point. But,
that might have been late in the Tuesday endeavor, the Tuesday all-nighter or whatever.
But I mean, Okwara, I just don't get why the NFL's not, why we haven't heard more buzz for Okwara. I don't know. I don't get it. I will need someone. We tried to get DJ to explain it to me, and I put my fingers in my ears and wouldn't listen. So maybe that's the problem, but I still don't get it.
The Golden Domer just can't understand. All right, last one here. Man, I still think about at the Combine where I had to sit next to you and fucking Brady Quinn just chopping it up for like a good 10 minutes about.
You were there? I don't remember that.
Random rec leagues at Notre Dame. Brady Quinn literally said to me, one of the first few things he said to me was, "What school did you go to?" That's how fucking stupid I felt. Like it was just absurd. Anyway, let's move forward. Bryan Edwards. I should have gone to Notre Dame. Bryan Edwards, the last pick, my last least favorite pick, and it's Bryan Edwards to the Jets at 68. I just think that's too high. I don't see Bryan Edwards as a top 70 player, and I think if the Jets already added Laviska Shenault Jr. at 48, adding like Bryan Edwards is just like a missable pick for me. I think they could go elsewhere at 68.
So there are people that love Edwards, like legit, because he broke out at 18 years old. That was his breakout age, 100 percentile dominator age rating. But in all seriousness, like there are things to like about his game. He is better after the catch than a lot of big receivers, but like you worry about the big receivers just getting locked up at the line, and he's pretty physical, but he really doesn't have quicks like to get himself free from receivers at the line of scrimmage or down the football field. So I just struggle with him being able to create separation on his own at the next level. And so 68 to the Jets. I mean, he is kind of redundant to like a Quincy Enunwa there. And I do regret that fit in retrospect, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. What are you going to do? It's a 3-round mock. It's not fucking easy. No one said this was going to be easy. Anyway, really appreciate that. Really appreciate you taking the flack on the least favorite and the praise on the favorite picks. Now let's pivot to the interview with Rotoworld and NBC Sports analyst Josh Norris. Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is Rotoworld and NBC Sports analyst Josh Norris. Josh, great to have you.
That is my name. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. It's great to bring you on. I know you've been with Rotoworld for quite some time now. Like you've been there you're one of the lifers over there. Can you talk to us about your background a bit and how you got started with them?
Yeah, I will try to keep it short. So I graduated from college in 2011, Elon University. Go Phoenix. Used to be the Fighting Christians. Only like back in 2001.
Wow.
Switched over. Yeah, right. I kind of wish it was that mascot, because I mean, what an unbelievable story. Anyways, I think a lot of people who get into football never played in college, but in some ways that was like their main interest while they were in college, and that was certainly the case for me. I was lucky enough to have an internship with the then St. Louis Rams heading into my senior year with their scouting department. So I was with them during training camp. That was Sam Bradford's rookie year. James Laurinaitis, Chris Long, Jason Smith had just been their first round pick the year prior. Plenty of stories from there. Was lucky enough then to be invited back for all 7 rounds of the 2011 NFL draft. Then the lockout happened, and I did not get a job with the then St. Louis Rams. And so I just took to Twitter and started just communicating with people who I enjoyed their work and enjoyed their opinions, and kind of latched on with Evan Silva there. And, just started sharing DMs and writing for them freelance wise and then pitch them turning their college football section into an NFL draft section. And as you guys know, once you do a little bit and you ask for more and you do a little bit more, it kind of snowballs as you go along. And, a year or two later moved up to Connecticut and I've been up there for 7 years ever since.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to also talk about, because you obviously have that background in scouting, I want to talk about your current evaluation process, kind of like how you go about scouting prospects. Like we've talked to Daniel Jeremiah about this. He says I think you have to earn your third tape is what he would say. Watch two games on a player and then watch 2 games on a player. And then if he does pass the test, pass the sniff test of like a top 150 type of player, you earn your third and fourth tape or wherever it may be. I'd be interested to know how you go about, scouting prospects and evaluating.
Yeah, I think this year has changed all of that. And so I think if you don't mind, I would rather just talk about previous years because this year's kind of just been thrown out the window with a lot of it. Most of my stuff, because I focus on the NFL up until really January 1st, then I start cramming all East-West Shrine Game prospects. And so that's about 100 plus that have been invited to that event. And it's funny, you mentioned DJ and, watching at least 2 games. A lot of those Shrine Game guys, and I'm sure both of you have watched some of them, you kind of get a sense of who they are in 10 to 20 plays at times. And, a lot of those players aren't going to wind up as long-term NFL players. So if I'm being completely transparent here, I might only watch about 10 to 20 plays of those guys. And if they don't really get my juices flowing, if they don't find like a trade I'm attached to, then I'll move on. And I have like an early sense of who they are early in the draft process. And then I can always go back to it. Obviously, then you have the Senior Bowl, you do the exact same thing, go a little bit more in depth with those. But what I've learned also is how much I value athletic testing. And, everyone always says like the eye in the sky doesn't lie. I think it absolutely does. I think our eyes lie to us all the time. And so having another figure or another number that allows us to cross-check ourselves and really how it can be, to me, imperative for certain positions, pass rushers, offensive linemen, and how it aids evaluations really does help me out. But typically, I'll at least watch 2 games on every player other than the 20 I might watch in a player I'm not too fond of. But other than that, yeah, it's quite simple. Just trying to find where players succeed and if they can do the exact same thing and win in the exact same way in the NFL.
There was a lot of what you said there that I liked. So a few things to unpack. The first one that might sound like crass to say, but like the 20 plays thing is for real at certain positions. Especially certain positions. I don't think like if a quarterback just doesn't have the arm strength, if a tackle just like can't move or get out of a stance, they ain't going to play in the NFL, and you can just cross those guys off your list. So as bad as that might sound, it is a very real thing. The other thing I wanted to kind of touch on was your value of athletic testing and the fact that the eyes do lie. And I can attest to that I do think that is very valid, especially when you have these 40-yard dashes and like the combine testing, you might not see a guy run. In his role, he might not be asked to actually run in a straight line, but you're going to have him do that in the NFL. So what, I guess, the biggest thing over the past decade, since you've been doing this almost a decade, what's the biggest thing that's kind of changed in your evaluation? Is it the athletic testing relying on that, or what's like the biggest thing you've learned over that period of time?
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's, I think, partly to blame of how the combine is presented. Not that, I could ever present the combine better than people who do it professionally and produce it. And it's a great event. And I love that it gets so much exposure. But really, when you're watching it from your couch, it's the 40-yard dash and then it's positional drills. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And so that forgets, 6 or 7 other tests that really make up a player's athletic profile. And, someone might run at 4.55 40, and that's kind of average for their position, but then go and have fantastic jumps, fantastic agilities, and test in like the 93rd percentile. Yet that just like floats underneath the table and it's not brought up. So realizing that, sure, people use the 40-yard dash as this universal test for athleticism, but when in reality, we need to really figure out and comprehend all 6 or 7 tests that make up an athletic profile, and then factor in weight. Weight's a big part of that, right? Because it's very different when, at the wide receiver position, we might have receivers that are 40 pounds difference, and they both might run a 4.51. Well, a guy who's 220 is very different than a guy who's 180 running a 4.51. So always factor in weight with that. And one final note, I'm not saying that, athletic profile is imperative at every single position. I truly don't think it is for early drafted running backs at all. But when you get to different points in the draft, I want to bank on athleticism. So you have your Matt Breidas, your Mike Boones, your Raheem Mosterts, your so on and so forth, who in the 6th, 7th undrafted free agents, I would love to take shots at athletic running backs. Then on the other side of that, I will absolutely not select an interior defensive lineman or an edge rusher who's like in the bottom 30th percentile in athleticism, because to me, you really need juice in those moments when you're facing pass protectors and offensive linemen in one-on-one situations. So I don't think you can completely implement athletic testing equally at every single position.
Are there guys, so you touched on, so the 40 gets overrated, and I 100% agree with that, but there are other guys in this class that you've identified that maybe the 40 didn't look good, but the rest of the athletic testing, or like you said, the size, the weight adjustment really makes them look like a much, much better athlete than maybe the general public thinks they are right now?
That's a good question. This year it's tough because we just don't have enough athletic profiles.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really
so
sucked.
You and I talked about this on my podcast, Mike, where like just watching edge rushers, like one after the other, like really 10 or 12 in a row, because I try to watch positions all at the same time. They were all just stand-up 2-point rushers who were trying to do the exact same thing and went on the edge and like work around offensive tackles. Well, having different athletic profiles where one guy is in the 85th percentile, one is in the 25th percentile would really benefit us in that moment. I might point, if I'm just looking at wide receiver, someone like Brandon Ayuk, who's, ran a 4.50, and, anything below, like above that 4.50 mark is not going to turn anyone's heads. Yet he put out a profile in the 89th percentile, didn't do any agilities, but had a great vert, a great broad jump. Obviously, his 10-yard split was quite good at 152, and that's all at 205 pounds. So, I think Zach Whitman does a really good job of this. You can check out his work at 3sigmaathlete.com. He's really kind of warped and shaped my opinion with all this. But again, I will go back to, I will be fascinated to see in 2 or 3 or 4 years how different this class might look success-wise in relation to where they were drafted based on our lack, at least from the outside looking in, of their athletic profiles.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we were talking to Scott Pioli, the former Kansas City Chiefs GM, and he was saying that a lot of that information will get to the NFL teams. It just won't get to media through them sending videos and stuff like that. I was talking to Josh Uche, the Michigan edge defender. He's saying he's running his 40-yard dash and then doing agility testing and stuff on video and sending it to teams. It'll be interesting to see, because I think the media is going to be lower on guys that maybe have better athletic testing that gets sent to those teams. Let's get specific to this class a little bit. We talked a little bit on guys that you think maybe outperform where they tested at the combine, but let's talk about your favorites in this draft class. Who are some of your guys in this draft class?
Well, I'll give you 2 names and you can ask about either one of them. Okay. And favorites, it's fun from our desk chairs looking at these classes, because, obviously favorites are who we rank at the top of the board, but then we all have personal favorites of players of where, we kind of see other people rank them or how much they are talked about by others. One who is mentioned near the top of his position, one of my favorites is Denzel Mems. I absolutely love Denzel Mems' evaluation. Now, another wide receiver that's further down the list is Antonio Gibson out of Memphis. Those are probably 2 of my favorites at this loaded wide receiver class. I think Mems, if I can just focus on him for a second, he's coming out of Baylor, and obviously this isn't like, Corey Coleman Baylor offense. It's a little more advanced than that. But as not prehistoric as his route tree might be, but as much as he wasn't asked to do a lot from that standpoint, I think he actually does a lot of the small things really well. And like the more I watched, the more I picked up on them, in that he is able in his routes with little, elbow bumps or hand usage, or even using his shoulder to create like that little sliver of separation on contact in his breaks. And whereas other people slow down in his moments, it seems like Mems plays faster in those moments. And obviously you have a fantastic athlete who has acrobatic footwork and body control along the sideline as well. So again, while we might not have seen a Stephon Diggs-like route tree during his time at Baylor, just from the small details and from the athletic standpoint and from a size standpoint, I'm kind of fully invested in Denzel Mems being a really great professional.
I am so glad you brought up Denzel Mems, because that's actually how we were going to close off today's podcast and the debate between Denzel Mems and Brandon Ayuk. But I kind of wanted to dig a little deeper because I thought his tape just left a little to be desired compared to athletic testing. You think of a guy that tests that off the charts athletically, he should be down to down, unguardable. And he was that at the Senior Bowl, I thought, if you watch Senior Bowl tape, but wasn't that game to game at Baylor. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you sort of weigh Senior Bowl performance against actual, on-field performance?
Yeah. So Senior Bowl this year, I was not there. I was assigned to a lot of Super Bowl work this year. And, as someone who went to the Senior Bowl for 7 straight years before this, I feel like I cannot comment on the Senior Bowl this year because I wasn't there, and I think that's only fair because, I think a lot of people then regurgitate other people's evaluations who were there at the Senior Bowl and just say, oh, Denzel Mems had a great Senior Bowl week. Whereas, as you know, when you're sitting there in the stands, I might think a rep is good and someone else might think a rep is bad or watching the tape afterwards. So like, if I wasn't there and I didn't watch him, then I can't even comment on his Senior Bowl week. And I've tried not to do that at all with any of these players.
They do have the tape online though. Just FYI.
They do. I have that in my iPad. I have not gotten to it yet because I'm so behind in this class. But I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But it was, again, one of those players where I don't think he's just solely relying on his athleticism, though. I don't think that this is just someone who's a size, speed athlete winning at the catch point, and that's it. I'm not sure if I can talk you out of your opinion because I think what he was asked to do, Denzel Mems did a great job at that. And I think when you also isolate those certain characteristics that I talked about that I think are nuanced little pieces of playing the receiver position, because, if you give him a free release, he's going to run right by you and then winning on contact throughout his route. Whereas he wasn't asked to, create separation constantly and sustain it. I do think early in his route and late in his route, with that little bits of contact that he initiated, he was able to create separation in those too. So, but it's okay if we disagree on him.
Yeah, I'm higher on Denzel Mems than Mike is. We had a little bit of a debate yesterday about him versus Ayuk, and we're going to talk about it later in the podcast. But I'm big on Denzel Mems. I really like what he does. The Senior Bowl was fantastic, and the athletic testing speaks for itself. I want to talk a little bit before we dive into second-year breakouts. This is the 2-for-1 drafts podcast. We do talk rookies as well. I want to get your take on some breakouts. I want to bring up Antonio Gibson. We've talked about him a bit on the podcast, and you said wide receiver, but we kind of see him playing a very versatile role in the NFL. He could play slot. I'd say he could be in the backfield a ton. Where do you see him playing in the NFL? Do you imagine him in that versatile role at the next level?
Well, thankfully, you guys chart all this stuff. Didn't he play wide receiver line up there like 70% of the time during his time at Memphis?
Yeah. He played a very similar role to what Tony Pollard played before he moved to kind of running back. And I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and he said he'll play wherever. Obviously, a lot of players do that when they are in kind of those versatile chess pieces. But I'm of the opinion that he is in his best. I think he plays his best in a Tony Pollard type of role where he's playing maybe in and out of the slot and out of the backfield as well.
I think that could happen. I also think we have to evaluate for teams that aren't that creative, and we have to understand that when players are selected at positions, that's most likely they're going to spend most of their time. And if I had to pick just one, I would put Antonio Gibson at wide receiver. And I would point to that SMU game, I believe that it was, where he's playing a lot in the slot. And we've seen so often, and we can just point to Deebo Samuel last year, not everyone's going to be attached to a play caller like Kyle Shanahan. And not everyone's going to develop quite like Deebo Samuel did during his rookie season. I think people forget that. Like early in his time with the 49ers, like Deebo not was a manufactured touch player, but they did want to get him the ball early on and then allow him to win afterwards. But then as the season went along, the 49ers kind of gave him more responsibility and more on his plate. If Gibson gets placed into a same situation, I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Deebo, but I think he can do a very admirable job because he obviously is super comfortable with the ball in his hands. But what I loved is that he did show wide receiver traits. Like you watch the SMU game, you see times when he was crossing the formation 7 to 12 yards down the field and a ball was put way off his frame and he's able to adjust it, throw his shoulder back and catch it away from his body. And then as soon as he hits the ground, boom, his eyes are upfield and he's seamlessly trying to create yards after the catch. And that's just something where, a lot of these hybrid players you don't see very often. I will also say that I would want him to work more at wide receiver because so much of running back production is dictated based on blocking success, right? You guys talk about this all the time. And so if he has, good blocking ahead of him, then he's going to pick up yards no matter what in the backfield. So I would love for him to focus as much as possible on that slot wide receiver role.
Yeah, something you said there that I think stands out is you have to evaluate for less creative, offensive play callers, because we always talk with similar players like Laviska Shenault, Antonio Gibson, Lynn Jr., these guys that with creative offensive coordinators can do a ton of things very well. But you have to also think about there are going to be teams that draft these players that want to see them exclusively in the slot, exclusively at X receiver. And I think concerning because you'd like to see more, creative play callers kind of take the next step with those guys. But I think it's fair that you do have to evaluate for those types. All right, last thing here I want to touch on is your second year breakouts of the rookies from last year that maybe didn't already make a splash. Who do you see kind of having a very good year two in 2020?
Yeah, and we still don't know exactly what roles these players are going to have, obviously, because, sometimes decision makers forget that these players are on their team and then move on to someone else in the draft. Who I'm super excited to see, and hopefully he gets more of a opportunity, would be Justice Hill with the Baltimore Ravens, because he's obviously a type of player that they don't have on their roster besides his own talents. I mean, I think we all love Mark Ingram. Gus Edwards has this, fun straight line style that would have been wildly successful in 1972. But Justice Hill has some make you miss in the open field, create on his own ability. Now, how much does that work with someone like Lamar Jackson? I think that's to be seen. But the jump that we saw from Lamar during his rookie year to his second year, maybe we see some more of that and some more creativity in his second year to his third year. And hopefully that includes Justice Hill. What'd you guys think of his rookie year?
I had honestly forgotten about it because I've been thinking of speed backs to them for a while. So I was like, oh yeah, Justice Hill is still with the Ravens. So yeah, that's kind of on me to have forgotten about
I feel like if the Baltimore Ravens took a more of a committee approach, similar to what the Niners have done with Mostert and Breda, Justice Hill could fly in the Ravens offense because he does have that speed and athleticism. I think he was a forgotten piece because Ingram and Edwards were having so much success. But I think a three-headed monster in Baltimore is what a lot of people talked about heading into last season. I just think they had a ton of firepower with their top two guys. I think Justice Hill, it's an interesting candidate. Definitely would be breaking out if he did come out in 2020.
I also want to bring up Andy Isabella, who I know is a Mike Renner favorite.
Now we're talking.
I think Renner compared him like Brandon Cooks last year. But I think he is now going to be set up for more success. Obviously, he and Hakeem Butler missed a ton of time prior to last season. And then once, NFL seasons start snowballing, it's tough to latch back on when you're a rookie. But when we're looking at what this Arizona wide receiver group can be, a lot of times, especially early last season, you had Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk in the slot quite often. And then now you'll probably keep them in the slot quite often, put Nuke Hopkins on the outside and maybe Andy Isabella on the outside, or you rotate him.
Right? One could dream. Putting right. Andy Isabella at outside receiver with those guys in the slot is what everyone, at least the guys at the PFF offices were praying for. I'm glad you're on board with it as well.
Well, and then at the very least, he and Kirk can kind of rotate on one side of the field or whatever in the slot or the outside. I think that's fun. I've been harping on Steve Keim and wondering if he has the ability to bring in talents that are of equal talent to Kyler Murray, because I mean, I'm sure you guys watched a lot of Kyler Murray last year, and I always go back to the Atlanta Falcons game where like there was instant disruption, a number of plays because of his offensive line. Yet Kyler avoided it, then reset in the pocket, then made these plays to wide receivers that are basically like roster fodder. And like the number one goal that Steve Keim should have had this offseason was to bring in other players that are of equal talent to Kyler. So it's an equal playing field. And that's when the offense could really move. And he obviously did that with DeAndre Hopkins. But I now wonder if they even stop there. Like, why not just keep investing in this team, especially along the offensive line? Because other than like Patrick Mahomes, maybe, I mean, Kyler is a special player. And I don't know if his rookie season really received enough love as it should have.
No, I would agree with you. I think, man, it'd be so nice to see Andy Isabella used properly and used more in 2020. I know Mike and I were both pounding the table for it on the podcast during the season last year. Josh, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. This has been very valuable insight. We'll have to get you on maybe closer to the draft or after the draft to get more takes from you, because I really appreciate your insight. I would also encourage all listeners to check out Josh's podcast. The Rotoworld Football Podcast can be found Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, because that's also a great listen. Josh, thanks again.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks, Mike. Talk to you guys soon.
Great stuff from Josh there. It's great to bring him on the podcast. I think I didn't know he started in scouting. I didn't know he was with the St. Louis Rams back then. I also didn't know he went to Elon, which was formerly the Fighting Christians.
Isn't that like the opposite of what Christian means? Like,
no,
aren't they supposed to not fight?
I don't know if there are clear-cut opposites for Christianity.
I'm not a Christian. I went to Notre Dame. I should know this, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he had some interesting takes. I'm glad the breakout candidates was what was most interesting. Justice Hill, he even talked to us off the podcast about Scotty Miller, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver. Some deep breakout candidates I like from Josh.
Yeah, those were cuts, dude. Like I said, I forgot about Justice Hill. I kept being like, dude, they should probably add some speed at running back. Oh wait, they did that last year. That's on me. But sometimes you forget, and sometimes you fuck up, and you just put your hand up and say, I forgot. Unfortunately.
Well, what was your opinion of what he was saying about Mems, him doing the little stuff well? I don't know how much.
We'll get to the Mems thing 1 second, but let me just touch on. I thought the most important thing that he said was his, don't take bottom 30 percentile athletes at certain positions, and I really agree with that. And that, I don't care how good the tape is for some of these guys, and it's again certain positions. Not every position is athleticism completely matter, like center, interior line, slot receiver, not huge positions for athleticism, but cornerback, defensive line, linebacker, don't take these guys who are bad athletes, because basically defense as a whole, because that's like, besides maybe slot cornerback, because that's so, covering ground is so important. Like, don't take the chance on the guy who maybe his tape looks good, but can't move on the football field, doesn't have the athletic testing, because 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be breaking the odds. I mean, beating the odds with that, because like it's just so much more difficult to excel at those positions when you're like a low tiered athlete. I think it's very difficult to get those guys to the ability they need to be. You have to be such a good football player to make up for like bottom third athleticism in the NFL. I thought another thing he said was interesting is like watching the first 20 plays on guys, kind of earning that 21st, 25th type of play and what you can get from a prospect. I think that doesn't get maybe talked about enough in terms of like watching prospects and trying to get like an immediate sense of, their ability and whether or not to press forward on like actually evaluating them as a top 200 draftable player.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes down to what we kind of just said about 30th percentile athleticism. If this tackle can't get out of his stance, and like there are guys in the PFF thing that grade well, and I still watch them because they do grade well, but Blake Brandel is a guy, Oregon State offensive tackle. I mean, you see him try to cut off linebackers at second level, and he's like, he can't come close. And at that point, like, yes, he graded well in pass protection, but if you're just not hitting the threshold, you just, like he had like a 90+ pass blocking grade this last year, but we have him as UDFA just because you're not going to be able to make it happen in the NFL.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap here. Let's do the bar fight over Mems and Ayuk, and then wrap the podcast. I am fully on board with Denzel Mems, the Baylor wide receiver, over Brandon Ayuk. I've been lower on Ayuk than you for a little bit. We talked about it in the past. I think our first bar fight was just discussing Brandon Ayuk as a prospect, but then yesterday we had the discussion about the draft board.
Was that our first bar fight?
It was. I'm pretty sure that was our first bar fight, if I do remember.
Oh, Jesus.
Correctly.
Well, we're going back to the well.
But largely because yesterday we had the conversation about the big board, Denzel Mems versus Brandel Ayuk. You wanted to move Mems down. You watched more of his tape. I was like, okay, you can move him down. I'm fine with it. I agree with your reservations. But if you move him below Brandel Ayuk, I will have a fit. And you did. You actually did. The Monday big board that Mike drops will have Mems below Brandel Ayuk, and I just can't stand it.
Yes, it will. And okay, here's the thing. And I will give you who Denzel Mems reminds me of. Reminds me of last year, Miles Boykin, Notre Dame. Watched Miles Boykin play his entire college career at Notre Dame. At no point did I think he'd run a 4.40. He'd never looked like that. He tested out, Josh's point about 3 Sigma athlete, he tested out as like a 99th percentile athlete when you take into account his 3 cone, his 40 vertical, broad jump, all that, knocked out the park. At no point did he ever look like that on tape. To me, that's Denzel Mems. And he goes to the Ravens and like whatever, 3rd round, nothing special so far yet. We'll see how he ends up, finishing his career. But at no point would I have ever guessed that just from watching him play at Notre Dame. Struggled, getting in and out of his breaks as a wide receiver, just like didn't look like that. Now, Denzel Mems maybe looked a little more explosive at times over his career, had a little more, was a little more of a vertical player than Boykin was, but still, I never would have expected that level of testing. And it's just like, he never really had these reps where he just like blew guys away and just like kept separating, double moves where he just killed them and just like kept going. And to me, Brandel Ayuk, 4.5, he is more on the spectrum of like, if you didn't know what DeAndre Hopkins ran in the 40, you would never guess he ran a 4.57. He just never played that slow. Like he never at any point plays that slow. To me, that's Brandel Ayuk. He never plays slow. Everything he does looks like it's explosive, looks like it's fast. 4.5. I mean, it's still fine speed, but doesn't match his tape. And I'll take that guy that plays faster than the 40 than the guy who you're like, where did that come from? I'll take that guy 9 times out of 10.
You know what? I hate the Miles Boykin comparison because it's super fair, and that kind of hits me home. I didn't think you were going to be able to kind of sway me at all, but I agree too that like Denzel Mems tested insanely, but like he does not always look like he's this explosive athlete that he was at the combine, like Brandel Ayuk does. Every route Brandel Ayuk runs, you could tell this guy's got a freaking rocket ship under his cleats there. But I mean, what I'll say was this: Boykin did not have the Senior Bowl that Denzel Mems had.
That's fair.
I think Denzel Mems really looked the part at the Senior Bowl. And again, it wasn't against good competition. We've talked about how bad the cornerbacks were there at the Senior Bowl. I would have loved to see Christian Fulton participate at the Senior Bowl. He bowed out late. I mean, I think when you look at the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, you really see what Denzel Mems can be. I talked to him. I feel like this guy is going to get better in the NFL. I also talked to Miles Boykin in the pre-draft process. Did not impress me like Denzel Mems did. However, I am close to the idea when you mentioned you just don't always see Denzel Mems' explosiveness and athleticism on the tape like you do with Brandel Ayuk. And I do agree that you see that. My reservations with Ayuk are the limited route tree, a ton of production on screens, and I'm just seeing his usage in the NFL being something that can be schemed, can be this faux production. Like, yes, he's good after the catch. Yes, he's explosive. But I want guys that can separate and win down the football field, with great consistency, do the little things well that kind of Josh Norris spoke to. And I'm just still on board, even with the Miles Boykin comparison kind of hitting home. I'm still on board with Mems over Ayuk, just seeing what he did at the Senior Bowl, etc.
All right.
Agree to disagree.
We're not gonna. I mean, no one's changing each other's mind here, but Brandel Ayuk's going to be ahead of him on the big board.
I will say this: you didn't change my mind, but I do think you brought me closer to the Brandel Ayuk conversation.
Can we throw out though? Can we just read off Miles Boykin's combine numbers, because how dumb? These were out of this world compared to how he looked on tape. He's 6'4", 220, which is a huge wide receiver. He ran a 4.42. 43.5-inch vertical,
the broad
11 foot 8-inch broad jump at 220 pounds, 6.77 3-cone, and a 4.07 shuttle. This guy should have legitimately switched to linebacker. He could be, he might be better.
That's a good call. That's not a bad call. I mean, man, that Miles Boykin comparison is hurting me. It's hurting my soul because it's feeling very good. But again, the Senior Bowl has me swinging in a different direction. I don't know. I'm starting to hate myself now. Is that what the bar fights are for? Is the bar fights to make me hate myself?
I'm basically like a prospect we're doing an interview with, and I'm just winning you over with every answer.
Exactly. I'm blown away, my friend. Blown away. Really appreciate that stuff. All right. Well, then thanks again, guys, for listening. Make sure you follow us on all the channels. You grab your podcast. Leave a review, if you will. We are no longer doing the draft guide giveaway. However, if you did not receive the draft guide with your initial review, you can email me at austin.gayle@pff.com. Also, watch us on YouTube. You can see all of our podcasts on YouTube if that's where you prefer your podcast. But until next time, this is Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.